This is Stu Ellis with your Illinois Corn Connection, brought to you by Illinois Corn. Drought is tough on corn, but particularly tough on corn if it's also suffering from corn rootworm feeding. That is underscored by University of Illinois entomologist Nick Seiter.
They're another insect that it's not so much that the dry weather helps them. It doesn't really help the insect as far as we know. Certainly, we all know that like these big, heavy, soaking rains can drown those larvae. But a normal amount of rain doesn't inhibit them. A normal amount of drought doesn't really help or hurt them at all. What it does is it exacerbates that damage. So, of course, when that plant loses its roots, when it's very dry, that's going to hurt that plant's ability to take up moisture, which becomes a lot more critical if there's not that much moisture in the soil, particularly if there's not that much moisture in the upper layers of the soil. And so it's not so much that the dry weather, like, it doesn't favor the insect necessarily. It doesn't hurt it, but it doesn't favor it. It's that it just kind of magnifies the impact of that root feeding injury.
Now, you have indicated in the past that East Central Illinois really hasn't been hit too hard in corn rootworms. It's not really a hot spot. Northern Illinois is more of a hot spot. What have you seen this year as far as control of with any of the biotech corn that's going to be controlling any potential damage?
Yeah, and we expect to see, I mean, a similar trend to what we've seen the last few years. And like you mentioned, that beetle population here in East Central Illinois, it's not very high. If you go up into northern Illinois, especially north of I-80, where there's a lot more corn after corn, that's where we're seeing these high beetle populations. It's not so much that our beetles down here are that much less resistant. Like, we're developing a resistance problem to Bt corn here as well, but those populations are much lower. And one thing to keep in mind, even when we have a resistant population, we're still killing a lot of them. So it's not like these populations are completely resistant to where they're just walking through Bt in most cases. There's a few populations like that, but not very many. So we're still reducing those populations. What we're very likely seeing is that the population that it takes to see issues in first-year corn in these areas that historically were where we had that variant western corn rootworm, you probably need a pretty serious beetle population before that really starts to occur. And we're just not seeing a population that's high enough right now in East Central Illinois to see that kind of damage in a meaningful way. And based on the beetle counts we've done over the last few years, last year in particular, we expect that to continue. You know, it's been hard to find corn rootworm beetles in soybean the last few years, and that's how they're overcoming that rotation, is by going out into soybean and laying some of their eggs there as opposed to laying all of their eggs in corn.
That was your Illinois Corn Connection. I'm Stu Ellis. To learn more about how Illinois corn is working for you, visit www.ilcorn.org.